everyone, it's Sevi. I've really been enjoying Ayato since he came out, so I wanted to keep exploring his potential teams and builds. As a Hydro unit, Ayato is well known to be great for different kinds of reaction comps, such as Vape, Freeze, and Taser, so in this video, I want to talk about some uncommon Ayato teams that you might not have tried yet. These are fun teams that may not be at the top of the meta, but can still clear Spiral Abyss in the right conditions. For each team, I'll give you info on how they synergize, build notes for the units involved, and their rotations to follow. Let's begin! The first team features Ayato and his ever-loyal retainer, Thoma. On one hand, Thoma synergizes nicely with Ayato since Ayato gains much-needed protection during his skill stance while reinforcing Thoma's shield with his normal attacks. But on the other hand, Thoma is the one triggering Vaporize and not Ayato, which isn't really ideal since Thoma is not generally built for damage and you'd rather Ayato be the one to vape instead. However, we can make their combo work by adding in an Electro unit to the mix, thereby turning this team into a Taser over Vape reaction team, and an Anemo support to crowd control, help apply elements, and shred enemy resistance. The options that work best for me are Fischl, whose role is a great off-field sub-DPS overall, even better if with C6 here, and a battery. Then Venti for the Anemo slot to group them all together and also battery the team. For build notes, well, Fischl and Venti have pretty much their usual build options, though I'd say having a Favonius bow on Venti is a nice option to help address this team's energy needs, especially since they're all different elements. Thoma in this case would need a high ER stat. I run him with 200% ER and found it to be just enough to burst every rotation against enemy mobs. You can also stack EM pieces on Thoma at the cost of his shield health if you want to do some cool overloads with him. However, prioritize having enough ER before that. As for Ayato, you have his general weapon picks, but uncommon alternatives would be the Lion's Roar, which can synergize thanks to the Pyro and Electro application of this team. Another one that's workable here is the Summit Shaper, since Ayato should always be protected by a shield anyway in this scenario, but only if you happen to have one already. As for the rotation, to start, generate Thoma's shield and catch the particles, then use his burst. Summon Venti's burst while catching the particles from his skill, but insert a normal attack either before or after this combo to proc Thoma's burst. In fact, you should insert normal attacks in the subsequent character's abilities. Switch to Fischl, proc Thoma's burst again with a normal attack, then summon Oz. For Ayato, normal attack again and then cast his burst. Now here's the fun part. Just use Ayato's attacks and watch all the enemies get obliterated. Then use Venti's press skill to generate energy for him, and his burst should be full once you catch the particles. If his burst was full before catching the particles, you can just funnel the energy to Thoma. Then switch back to Thoma and get ready to restart the rotation. The end result is a vortex of colorful numbers with Thoma fighting alongside his Kamisato master. The next one is a Taser team composed of Ayato, 2 Electros, which for me are ideally Fischl and Beidou, and an Anemo unit. In this case, I'm showcasing Jean since this team will need a healer. But before you say, wait, this is a pretty common team, hear me out first. What if we put Thundering Fury on Ayato? What you're aiming for here isn't Electro Ayato, but additional reaction damage and a means to extend his DPS window by shaving down his skill cooldown with the 4-piece Thundering Fury passive. If you look at the 4-piece effect, it says that if you trigger Electro-related reactions, in this case Electro Charge with Ayato, then the skill cooldown is reduced by 1 second. This results in you doubling his DPS window and having more time to enjoy his swing gameplay as well as synergizing with Beidou's burst, as you can maximize its duration by extending Ayato's own skill duration as well. However, if you fail to proc Electro Charged with Ayato, the Thundering Fury passive won't kick in and you'll be awkwardly left hanging with some extra seconds before his skill refreshes. Thus, fighting a group of enemies is ideal so that you'll have many opportunities to proc Electro Charge. Kazuha can be used for a higher damage ceiling at the cost of a healer if you're feeling confident. Alternatively, instead of an animal unit, you can use Bennett instead for healing, and at least Fischl and Beidou can snapshot his buffs. However, this runs the risk of stealing him from other teams that need him more. To make it clear, I'm not telling you to go farm Thundering Fury right now, and of course, Ayato will only work on a Taser team with that set, but it's definitely fun to give Ayato more field time this way. For the builds, Fischl, Beidou, and your animal units builds are as usual. The slight variation will come from Ayato here. 1, he can get away with much less energy recharge. Even just around 110 to 120% can be enough. 2, this is an opportunity to use Lion's Roar if you have it. For the rotation, first apply Electro to enemies with Beidou's skill, catch the particles if her burst isn't full. Then cast Ayato's burst for Hydro application. This can proc Electro charge with Beidou's Electro. Then use Jean, or whoever your animal unit is, to swirl Electro and Hydro on enemies. You can use her skill, then followed by the burst to catch the particles. Then use Fischl to summon Oz, and then cast Beidou's skill, followed by her burst and catch the particles. Then this is where the magic happens. Use Ayato's skill to do normal attacks which should trigger Electro Charge. While that happens, you'll see his cooldown going down due to the 4-piece Thundering Fury effect. Then by the time his skill duration is done, you can already cast it again and do his attacks for another 6 seconds. You'll still be proccing Beidou's burst the second round of his skill. And the great thing about this too is that he can get away with low energy recharge since he generates a lot of particles this way. Then if your Jean doesn't have enough energy, you can switch back to her and use her skill to swirl and catch particles. However, if Beidou and Jean's bursts are back up, then you can just skip straight to Beidou and restart the rotation. So if you have a Thundering Fury set lying around, go ahead and try this comp. Now we have this double Geo team of Ayato, 2 Geos, and a flex slot. The Geo units would ideally be Yunjin to provide the normal attack damage buff and Zhongli for his shielding benefits. This should protect Ayato very well, and the Geo Resonance helps in boosting his damage too. As for the flex slot, Mona is my choice since her Omen buff boosts Ayato's damage even further, and it times well with Ayato's 6-second window. Plus, it's easier for Ayato and Mona to help battery one another. Another alternative would be Fischl for single target DPS and to add electrocharged reactions. This team's cooldowns line up very well and make for seamless rotations. In this team, you'll want Yunjin with a lot of ER, maybe even an ER Sands if you're short on substats, plus a Favonius Lance. With that, she'll be able to get her burst up on cooldown reliably. For Mona, it's a matter of simply picking up as much ER as possible regardless of set because her field time is extremely brief. This build sports about 250% energy recharge. If you want, you can give her Prototype Amber for the energy refund, and so you have a healer on the team. But if you're not too concerned about that extra energy and healing, you can give Mona Thrilling Tales to buff Ayato. Zhongli doesn't have particular energy requirements because using his burst here is optional. He's really just here for the shield, resistance shreds, and geo-resonance. It is helpful if you get his burst up though, as it offers additional crowd control. Ayato in this team will want at least 150% ER. For the rotations, start by casting Zhongli's shield for thick protection. Then cast Ayato's burst to allow his energy regeneration to kick in and set up the normal attack damage bonus of his field. Use Yunjin's skill, then burst to set up her buff and get some energy in return. Then Mona's skill and burst, which sets up the Omen buff and disables small enemies. And here's where Ayato's DPS window is, after all those buffs have been set up. Finally, you can finish it off with Zhongli's burst to disable any enemies left alive. Then you can set up the rotation again. Aside from the smooth rotation, one upside of this team for me is seeing these two husbandos in one comp. Lastly is this Avatar team. This team also uses Ayato with Yunjin, but now the water and earth characters are accompanied by fire and air in the form of Bennett and Kazuha. It's a great way to achieve some nice damage per screenshot with Ayato being buffed by Yunjin, Bennett, and Kazuha with occasional vaporizes in between. Ayato here will need a higher ER stat though, since the rotation only involves one round of his skill for each burst he does. At least there's an opportunity here to give his teammates Favonius weapons. For the rotation, start off with Ayato's burst to immediately bring out Hydro application for swirling later. Yunjin's skill to generate particles and catch them as she does her burst. Then hold Kazuha's skill to pull in as many enemies as you can and swirl Hydro to shred enemies' Hydro resistance and get the elemental damage buff. Then use Bennett's skill, then catch his particles after popping his burst. And let Ayato do his DPS job now with all his teammates' buffs. Afterwards, use Yunjin's skill to battery herself and your team. And at this point, Bennett's self-pyro infusion should still be active, so Kazuha can infuse pyro into his burst, then press his skill again and catch the particles. However, if you don't have enough energy, simply use his skill. Then you can finish with Bennett's skill, which you can use to recharge him or funnel to others that needed energy. However, if everyone else's bursts are ready, just skip straight to Ayato to restart the rotation. Putting all the avatar's elements together really brings out some juicy numbers from Ayato. And those are the teams and builds of this video. Whether you want to try these teams, I hope this video at least encourages you to do some experimentation with your own units and builds so that you can play the game how you enjoy it the most. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, consider subscribing to my channel for more Genshin Impact guides and content, and I will see you all soon. Take care!